Welcome to Brian's Briefing, part of The Brian Nichols Show. I'm Brian Nichols, and in these focused episodes, I dive into key issues, ideas, and principles that shape our world. No frills, no fluff, just straight talk on matters that count. Now, let's get started. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's near and dear to many libertarians' hearts, the non-aggression principle, or NAP for short. But here's the twist. We're not just going to talk about the principle itself. No, we're going to tackle something far more important. How does the NAP actually work in real life? You see, libertarian ideas and principles are great, but they're only valuable if they can exist and function in the real world. So, buckle up, because we're about to take a hard look at the non-aggression principle and see how it holds up when the rubber meets the road. Let's start by defining the problem we're facing. The non-aggression principle sounds great in theory, but does it work in practice? Here's what we're dealing with. First, the NAP states that libertarians oppose the initiation of force to achieve social and political goals. Second, it includes a, quote, good neighbor policy. Basically, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't hit others unless they aggress against you first. And third, libertarians argue that these personal ways of living should carry forward to government actions. Now, you might be thinking, Brian, that sounds pretty reasonable. What's the problem? Well, the issue lies in the assumption that most people already live this way. But is that really true? Here's where libertarian philosophy starts to run into trouble in the real world. The entire argument for supporting non-aggression and this good neighbor policy is built on the assumption that most people already live this way. But let's look at just the last 5 years or so. Since 2019, and really since the COVID pandemic, it's become increasingly apparent that more and more Americans aren't actually in that mindset. So our problem is this: how do we apply the non-aggression principle in a world where not everyone shares these values? So now that we've identified the problem, let's break it down and analyze why this is such a challenge. First is the age-old battle of idealism versus reality. Libertarianism is a very idealistic perspective. It's a very idealistic political idea, but it also has a lot of requirements from folks across the board who do not adhere to libertarian ideas. Second, diverse perspectives. We live in a world that's divided not just on political ideologies, but also on socioeconomic factors, racial factors, religious factors, geographical factors. The list goes on. And there are so many pieces to this puzzle that impact someone's moral and principled frameworks. Third, the existence of bad actors. Let's face it, there are bad people in the world. There are evil people in the world. And this is where the libertarian argument of, well, yeah, we respond with force when we are just met with force, falls short. 4, the waiting game. The problem is, we're all in the mentality of waiting for someone to hit us first. But is that really the best approach? Shouldn't we be creating situations and circumstances where we aren't in positions to get hit in the first place? And 5th, the harm principle dilemma. This goes back to the harm principle of John Stuart Mill. You have the right to swing your fist, but it ends up to where my nose begins. But here's the thing. In the time that somebody is swinging their fist towards your nose, you need to be able to make a very real and calculated response. Before we move on to the solution, let's address a question from one of our listeners, Sarah from Ohio. She asks, Brian, I understand the non-aggression principle, but how do we apply it when dealing with a government that doesn't follow the same principles? Isn't it naive to expect the government to suddenly start adhering to the NAP? Great question, Sarah. And yes, you've hit the nail on the head. This is exactly the kind of real-world application we need to consider. And the truth is, it's naive to expect the government to suddenly start adhering to the NAP. This is why our solutions need to focus on how we, as individuals and communities, can apply these principles in our daily lives, even when dealing with entities that don't share our values. So, what's the solution? How do we live our principles in the real world? Well, here's a practical approach. First, we gotta lead by example, but be smart. meaning we should absolutely live by our principles and lead by example, but also we need to be realistic about the world we live in. 2, create safe spaces. Now, I hear you. No, I mean, instead of putting ourselves in dangerous situations, we should instead focus on creating circumstances where we're not in a position to be aggressed against in the first place. 3rd, and this follows right with number 2, build communities. So surround yourself with good people who share your mindset. When you're building a community, that's where you really have to focus your time and attention when it comes to values. 4th, balance principles with practicality. Couple our principles, the non-aggression principle, the good neighbor policy, couple all those with our morals and our values. Find ways to live our principles that make sense in the real world, not just in theory. Number 5, educate and engage. Instead of expecting others to automatically adopt our principles, focus on education and engagement. Educate, enlighten, and inform, as we talk about here on The Brian Nichols Show. Help others understand the benefits of the non-aggression principle through dialogue and demonstration. Number 6, be prepared. While we shouldn't initiate aggression, we should be prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. And no, that does not contradict the NAP at all, but rather it's about being realistic in the world we live in right now. And number 7, focus on personal relationships. Apply the NAP in your personal relationships and in your local community. Change often starts small and grows from there. So as we wrap up our short Brian's briefing, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. First, the non-aggression principle and subsequently the good neighbor policy are absolutely valuable ideas. They're part of what makes libertarianism an attractive philosophy for so many folks. But if we want to see these principles actually work in the real world, we need to be realistic about how we apply them. That means we need to be smart about the situations we put ourselves in. We need to build communities of like-minded individuals who share our values. And most importantly, we need to find ways to live our principles that make sense in the real world, not just theory. So here's my challenge of the week. Think about one situation in your daily life where you can apply the non-aggression principle in a practical way. Maybe it's in your interactions with your neighbors or how you handle a disagreement at work. And then put it into practice. At the end of the week, I want you to reflect on how it went. Did it make a difference? Was it challenging? What did you learn? And then share your experiences with us. Send me an email at brian@briannicholsshow.com or tag me on social media at @bnicholsliberty. I'd love to hear how it goes, and hey, we might even feature some of your stories, like Sarah's, in a future episode. And that wraps up today's episode of Brian's Briefing. If you found value in this episode, please share it and tag yours truly at @bnicholsliberty on social media. For more content, hit subscribe and the notification bell on your favorite video and podcasting platforms. Of course, continue the conversation in the comments below or email me at brian@briannicholsshow.com. And don't forget to support our phenomenal sponsors like AMP America and Cardio Miracle. You can find all of our sponsor links over on our homepage at briannicholsshow.com. This is Brian Nichols signing off. We'll see you next time on The Brian Nichols Show.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.